The city of Ur is burning. The night air trembles with the sound of collapsing walls as soldiers from Elam force their way through the gates. Families run through narrow streets made of mud brick. Priests cling to sacred statues, hoping to save them from looters. The king of Ur has already been taken captive. The empire that once ruled southern Mesopotamia is falling, and no one in this desperate moment can imagine that the world will one day call this place the cradle of civilization. To understand how this collapse became possible, we must step back from the smoke and chaos. We must return to a strange and unlikely land in the deep past. Southern Mesopotamia offers almost no natural resources. There are no forests for timber. There are no stones for building. Rain is rare and unpredictable. At first glance, this region seems like the last place humans would choose for dense urban life. Yet this barren landscape gave rise to the earliest known civilization on Earth. The mystery begins here. How did a land with so little become the birthplace of so much? According to Sumerian tradition, the answer was divine. In their stories, kingship was not invented by human hands. It was lowered from heaven by the gods themselves. They believed that order, leadership, and social hierarchy were sacred gifts. This idea shaped their entire worldview. It justified the authority of rulers and the power of temples. It explained why cities emerged where they did, and why people agreed to work together in massive communal projects. Whether or not these beliefs reflect historical truth, they reveal how the Sumerians understood their own origins. They saw civilization as a cosmic event, not an accident. But the real puzzle runs deeper. For thousands of years, the memory of Sumer faded from the world. Later empires rose on the same soil. Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and Persians built their own cities on the ruins of older ones. The Sumerians were forgotten so completely that ancient writers barely mention them. When early archaeologists first uncovered strange tablets written in wedge-shaped signs, they assumed the language was a form of early Babylonian. Only later did researchers realize that they had rediscovered an entirely different people, one whose roots reached back to the 4th millennium before the Common Era. This is the surprising paradox at the heart of Sumer. It was the earliest civilization we know, yet it vanished so thoroughly that even its name became a secret. How could a society that built the first cities, the first administrative systems, and the first known form of writing disappear from human memory? How did its achievements survive while the people themselves were forgotten? The answer lies in the tension that defined Sumer from the beginning. Southern Mesopotamia produced tremendous wealth through agriculture, trade, and craftsmanship. At the same time, it was fragile. Irrigation systems required constant maintenance. City-to-city rivalry created near-continuous conflict. Leadership depended on religious authority and political skill. A single weak ruler, a single failed harvest, or a single ambitious neighbor could unravel everything that generations had built. This combination of creativity and vulnerability shaped the entire trajectory of Sumerian history. It made the rise of cities possible and guaranteed that their survival was never secure. It allowed innovation to flourish while leaving society exposed to sudden collapse. The scene of Ur in flames is not just a dramatic moment. It is the culmination of centuries of tension between cooperation and conflict, prosperity and uncertainty. It raises the central question that guides the story of Sumer. What allowed a fragile cluster of mud brick settlements to reshape human history forever? And how did their world become the foundation of every complex society that followed? To answer this, we must trace the origins of their cities and the forces that turned scattered villages into a true civilization. The story of Sumer begins with its land. Southern Mesopotamia lies between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, two waterways that carried rich silt from distant mountains. The soil they deposited was extremely fertile, but the environment was unpredictable. Rain was rare, and the rivers often flooded at the wrong time or not at all. People could not rely on nature. They had to control it. This challenge pushed early communities to dig canals, shape embankments, and guide water across dry plains. Irrigation did not appear all at once. It grew step by step as villages cooperated to survive. These shared efforts laid the foundation for collective identity and eventually for urban life. As these networks expanded, certain settlements gained ritual and political authority. One of the earliest was Eridu, regarded by later Sumerians as the first city. Archaeology shows that its temple complex was rebuilt again and again over centuries, each time larger and more elaborate. This suggests a growing class of temple administrators who organized labor, redistributed food, and managed early religious traditions. Their influence helped transform Eridu from a simple shrine into a regional center. Further north, another settlement rose to even greater prominence. Uruk grew rapidly during the 4th millennium before the Common Era and became one of the largest urban sites in the ancient world. Its leaders, often called priest-kings by modern scholars, appear to have controlled both ritual authority and practical administration. Some later Sumerian stories link Uruk to legendary rulers such as Enmerkar or Gilgamesh. These figures are difficult to confirm historically, but their presence in early epics suggests that Uruk was remembered as a city of exceptional power. Urban life created new problems that required new solutions. With thousands of people living close together, record-keeping became essential for managing resources. The first writing began as simple pictographs pressed into clay tablets. These signs represented goods like grain or livestock. Over time, the system grew more abstract. Scribes invented a script based on wedge-shaped marks made with a reed stylus. Modern scholars call this system cuneiform. The shift from pictures to abstract signs allowed scribes to record not only inventories, but also laws, transactions, and eventually stories. Writing was one of the most important Sumerian breakthroughs because it preserved information across generations. Other innovations followed. Standardized weights and measures helped regulate trade. Seal impressions provided a way to secure goods and identify officials. Accounting tables recorded the work of laborers and the movement of commodities. These tools supported a level of organization that had not existed before. They also strengthened the authority of temple and palace elites, who now controlled vast economic networks. As administrative systems developed, urban planning advanced. Cities were laid out, with distinct districts for worship, trade, housing, and manufacturing. Enormous temples rose above the streets. These stepped structures, which later generations called ziggurats, functioned as both religious centers and symbols of civic pride. Their construction required precise coordination of workers and resources. The ability to build such monuments shows how deeply organized Sumerian society had become. By the early 3rd millennium before the Common Era, the landscape of southern Mesopotamia was dotted with powerful city-states such as Ur, Lagash, Umma, and Kish. Each city controlled its surrounding farmland and competed fiercely for water and territory. Rivalry sometimes led to conflict, but it also encouraged rapid development. Leaders sought to expand their influence through diplomacy, warfare, and trade. Merchants traveled along river routes and across deserts, connecting Sumer to regions as far as Anatolia, the Persian Gulf, and possibly the Indus Valley. These exchanges brought metals, timber, and luxury goods that Sumer itself lacked. What had once been scattered villages now formed a dense web of urban centers. Their canals branched across the plain. Their temples dominated the skyline, and their administrative systems guided daily life. Sumer emerged not because its land was easy to tame, but because its challenges forced people to innovate. Irrigation bound communities together. Writing kept their world organized. Trade carried their influence outward. By overcoming the limits of their environment, the Sumerians created the framework for the first known civilization. At its height, Sumer was a landscape filled with cities that seemed almost impossible for their time. Among them, Ur stood as one of the most impressive. Its harbor on the lower Euphrates linked the city to distant regions by river and sea. The streets around the sacred quarter were full of life. Workshops produced fine textiles, metal goods, carved shells, and intricate jewelry. Markets brought together traders, farmers, and craftsmen. Schools trained scribes who learned long lists of signs, mathematical tables, and legal formulas. These scribal academies created a professional class that kept the entire system functioning. Their work preserved economic records, temple accounts, legal agreements, and early literature. Culture reached new levels of complexity. Sumerian myths and heroic tales circulated in written and oral form. The Epic of Gilgamesh, although surviving in later Akkadian versions, began in this environment. Some of the oldest Sumerian poems describe Gilgamesh as a king who builds walls, defeats monsters, and seeks meaning beyond human limits. These stories reveal how the people of Uruk imagined their rulers and their destiny. Other texts describe the creation of the world, the duties of gods, and the origins of kingship. The literary tradition of Sumer influenced later cultures for centuries. Advances in mathematics and astronomy supported practical activities. Sumerians developed a system based on the number 60 that shaped timekeeping and geometry. They used it to measure fields, track the movement of goods, and structure administrative records. They observed celestial cycles to regulate calendars and religious festivals. Their legal traditions also grew more detailed. The law code of Ur-Nammu, written around the 21st century before the Common Era, is the earliest known surviving law code in history. It set fines and punishments for various offenses and shows a society that valued order and predictability. Religion guided every part of Sumerian life. Each city believed it was protected by a patron deity. Temples acted as economic centers, employing workers, managing land, and storing surplus grain. Priests organized offerings, festivals, and rituals. Bureaucracies expanded around these institutions, creating a network of officials responsible for taxation, construction, and trade. The coordination required for such large-scale management shows how advanced Sumerian administration had become. Political leadership shifted from city to city as power rose and fell. Lagash, under rulers like Eannatum and later Gudea, became a major force. Inscriptions praised their building projects and military victories, though ancient kings often exaggerated their achievements. Even so, the archaeological evidence confirms that Lagash was an important center of art, religion, and administration. Trade extended far beyond the borders of Sumer. Merchants reached Anatolia for metals, the Indus Valley for precious stones, and Oman for copper. These regions supplied materials that Sumer itself lacked. In return, Sumer exported textiles, crafted goods, and agricultural products. Such long-distance exchange shows that Sumer was not an isolated world. It was part of a network linking the earliest complex societies of the ancient Near East. Despite its achievements, Sumer was never entirely stable. City-states competed for land and water, leading to frequent conflict. Border wars between Ur and Umma, recorded in inscriptions, lasted for generations. Yet at times, leaders managed to unify much of the region. The third dynasty of Ur, which began around the 21st century before the Common Era, created a centralized state that controlled large areas of southern Mesopotamia. Its rulers built monumental structures, issued standardized laws, and organized labor on a massive scale. This period is often considered the closest Sumer came to forming a true empire. Although this unity did not last long, it demonstrated the political potential of the Sumerian world and its ability to coordinate people and resources on an impressive scale. At its peak, Sumer was a civilization of extraordinary creativity and ambition. Its cities were crowded with scholars, craftsmen, merchants, and officials. Its rulers built monuments that dominated the horizon. Its stories shaped the earliest traditions of human literature. Yet beneath the surface of its success lay pressures that would eventually push the system toward decline. Sumer's brilliance came with fragility. Its cities were tightly interconnected, yet constantly competing. Water from the Tigris and Euphrates had to be carefully managed through canals and levees. When maintenance was neglected, irrigation systems clogged with silt or collapsed entirely. Over time, fields suffered from salinization, a buildup of salt that reduced crop yields and weakened the economic foundation of the city-states. Even when harvests succeeded, rulers often imposed heavy taxes to fund temples, palaces, and military campaigns. These demands placed constant strain on ordinary citizens, fueling unrest and making the cities vulnerable to external attack. Sumer was never a unified empire for long. Its wealth and strategic location attracted neighbors eager to seize power. Around 2330 before the Common Era, Sargon of Akkad conquered much of southern Mesopotamia, creating one of the earliest known empires. Sumerian cities retained some autonomy, but their political independence ended. After the Akkadian Empire weakened, the region faced waves of invasions by the Gutians, a people from the Zagros Mountains. They disrupted trade, neglected canals, and caused social instability. Later, Amorite groups moved into the area, continuing the pattern of external pressure. Sumerian city-states were resilient, but repeated invasions weakened their political, economic, and social structures. The final turning points were a combination of environmental, economic, and political collapse. Irrigation networks fell into disrepair, leaving farmland unproductive. Cities that once thrived, such as Ur and Uruk, gradually lost population. Archaeological evidence shows that large-scale construction projects ceased, and temple complexes were abandoned. Around 2000 before the Common Era, power shifted north to Babylon, where new dynasties built upon the remnants of Sumerian knowledge while ruling in their own style. Sumer did not disappear overnight, but its dominance ended, and the world's first civilization became a memory preserved in clay tablets and myths. Despite the collapse of its cities and political structures, Sumer's legacy endured in remarkable ways. Writing survived as cuneiform, adapted by Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and Hittites. This script enabled record-keeping, literature, and administration for centuries. The legal traditions developed in Sumer influenced later codes, most famously the Code of Hammurabi in Babylon. Architectural innovations also persisted. Ziggurats inspired later temples and monumental structures throughout Mesopotamia. Sumerian mathematics based on the number 60 shaped timekeeping and angles, principles that continue to affect our daily lives. Even their myths and epics, including tales of Gilgamesh and creation stories, informed subsequent literature and religious thought across the region. Sumer was a civilization that balanced extraordinary achievement with inherent instability. Its cities were the first to concentrate large populations in organized urban life. Its leaders and priests developed systems of law, trade, and governance that allowed society to flourish for centuries. Its innovations in writing, mathematics, astronomy, and architecture became the blueprint for future civilizations. Even as political power shifted and cities crumbled, Sumer's contributions endured, shaping the development of human society across the ancient Near East and beyond. The rise and fall of Sumer teaches a profound lesson about human ingenuity and vulnerability. It shows how cooperation, innovation, and ambition can overcome environmental challenges and create civilization itself. At the same time, it warns that even the most advanced societies remain fragile if environmental pressures, internal conflicts, and external threats are not managed. Though the mud brick walls of Ur and Uruk lie in ruins, The achievements of Sumer continue to echo through history. Its inventions and ideas became the foundation for writing, law, architecture, and governance, influencing every complex society that followed. Sumer's legacy is not in its surviving cities, but in the enduring impact of its civilization on the world.